The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 levels, each platform holding representatives from dozens of star systems. Crystalline spires rose through the center where holographic displays showed star maps and treaty documents that had kept peace for nearly 2 centuries. Since humanity joined the community ambassador, Lisa Crawford stood at the human podium with her hands folded calmly in front of her dark suit, watching the Krillian delegation storm onto their platform across the chamber. Their scaled bodies reflected the blue light from the displays as Admiral Vexter slammed his clawed hand against his console. The Krillian Empire demands immediate transfer of the human colonies in the Outer Rim sectors. Vexter's voice boomed through the translation systems, his yellow eyes fixed on Crawford with barely contained aggression. Your species has claimed 12 systems that rightfully belong to our expansion zone. You will vacate them within 30 cycles or face military consequences. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs from the assembled delegates. The Vorian counselor raised his ancient hand for silence, while his long silver beard draped over his ceremonial robes. Crawford smiled politely and touched her console to bring up historical documents. Admiral Vexter, those colonies were established over 140 years ago under the Expansion Accords of 2187. Earth filed all proper documentation with this council and received unanimous approval. We do not recognize those outdated agreements. Vexter interrupted. His military uniform bristled with weapons and medals from numerous campaigns. The Krillian Empire has grown. We require those systems for our population. Your soft species can relocate easily enough. You have always been traders and diplomats, not warriors who can defend such valuable territory. Several other species nodded along with the Krillian position. Crawford noticed the patterns immediately. These were all aggressive military cultures who viewed Earth's peaceful reputation as weakness rather than choice. Hi. Counselor Zephron stood slowly from his elevated platform. At over 300 years old, the Vorian was one of the few beings present who remembered first contact with humanity. Admiral Vexter, I strongly advise reconsidering this course of action. There are historical records you should review before. Historical records. Vexter laughed harshly. His scales rattled with the sound. I have reviewed human history, Counselor. They spent 2 centuries in this council chamber talking and trading while real powers built fleets and conquered systems. They hide behind defense pacts with stronger species. They are merchants who fear conflict. Crawford's expression never changed, but her voice carried a subtle edge that only the most perceptive delegates noticed. Admiral, I urge you to reconsider. Earth has no desire for conflict with the Krillian Empire or any other civilization. However, we will protect our citizens and our territory. Please, do not force us to demonstrate capabilities we have deliberately kept dormant for the sake of galactic harmony. The Krillian delegation erupted in laughter. Vexterous officers joined their commander in mocking the human warning. Dormant capabilities. What will you do, Ambassador? Negotiate us to death? File complaints with the Council? Your species has shown nothing but weakness since joining this community. You rely on others for protection because you cannot protect yourselves. Zephron tried again, his voice heavy with concern that transcended species. Admiral, I witnessed Earth's integration into galactic society. I reviewed classified reports that remain sealed in the archives. There are reasons humanity was invited to join us rather than being left to develop independently. There are reasons so many species supported their rapid acceptance. Please, consult with your intelligence services before taking action against enough. Vexter roared. His patience had clearly ended. The Krillian Empire does not cower before warnings from weak species. We have crushed stronger civilizations than humanity. Our fleet will depart for the Outer Rim colonies within 3 cycles. Any human presence remaining will be considered an act of war. Any interference from Council forces will be met with full military response. The chamber descended into chaos as multiple delegates tried to speak at once. Some demanded sanctions against the Krillians, while others questioned why Earth deserved such extensive colonial territories. A few military cultures openly supported Vexter's position. Crawford waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. Her voice remained calm, but carried throughout the massive chamber. "Then I have only one more thing to say to you, Admiral Vexter." Every delegate fell silent. Something in the human ambassador's tone made even the most aggressive species pause. "Do not do this," Crawford said quietly. Each word was measured and clear. "Do not attack human colonies. Do not threaten human citizens. Do not force Earth to respond. I am asking you, as one sentient being to another, to reconsider this course of action. The consequences will be far beyond what you anticipate." Vexter sneered at her. His contempt was obvious to everyone present. "Your threats are empty, Ambassador. Humanity will learn the price of claiming territory they cannot defend. Perhaps after we occupy your colonies, your species will remember its proper place in this galaxy." The Krillian delegation stormed out of the chamber. Their heavy footsteps echoed off the crystalline walls. As they departed, Crawford watched them leave, and then turned to address the remaining council members. "Earth formally requests that this council intervene before military action begins. We wish to resolve this peacefully. We have always chosen peace when given the option." Several delegates voiced support, but the military powers remained silent. Everyone knew the council could not act quickly enough to stop them. Krillian fleet Zephyron approached Crawford's platform after the session ended. His ancient eyes held deep sadness. "You tried to warn him." "I tried to warn him." "Will your government authorize defensive action?" "My government will do what is necessary to protect our people," Crawford replied. She began gathering her materials with steady hands. "We have hoped for 200 years that we would never need to show the galaxy who we really are. We have built a reputation as peaceful traders and diplomats because that is who we chose to become. But choosing peace does not mean forgetting how to fight." "I know," the old Vorian whispered. "I read the sealed reports from your first contact era. I know what your species was before you reached the stars. I know what you are still capable of being. I had hoped the galaxy would never need to learn that lesson." Crawford activated her personal communicator and entered a series of encrypted codes. Her message was brief and simple, but carried enormous weight. Protocol Achilles. Colonial Defense Authorization. Full spectrum response approved. The message transmitted instantly through quantum channels to Earth. Within seconds, it reached military command centers that had remained dormant for generations across human space. Ancient systems began waking up. Defense networks activated. Mothballed warships started powering their reactors. Retired military personnel received recall notices. The sleeping giant was stirring. High Counselor Zephyron watched Crawford leave the chamber and wondered if the galaxy was ready to learn why experienced admirals knew one absolute rule: never wake the humans. The message reached Earth Defense Command exactly 17 seconds after Ambassador Crawford transmitted it from the council chambers. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the Central Operations Room watching holographic displays spring to life. Across every console, as systems that had been silent for over a century suddenly activated. Protocol Achilles confirmed, the communications officer announced. Her voice was steady despite the significance of those two words. All defense stations responding. Quantum Network is establishing secure channels. The entire grid is coming online. Morrison nodded and moved to the main tactical display. At 52 years old, he had spent his entire military career hoping this day would never come, yet preparing for it constantly. Contact all fleet commanders. Begin reactor ignition sequences for all mothballed vessels. Activate reserve personnel recall. I want status reports from every sector within the hour. Around him, officers moved with practiced efficiency. There was no panic or confusion because every person in Earth Defense Command had trained for this scenario hundreds of times. They simply had hoped training would be all they ever needed on the colony world of New Portland. Captain Nicole Hayes received the same message while reviewing quarterly resource reports in her civilian office. She immediately locked her door and pressed her hand against a hidden panel that scanned her biometrics. The wall behind her desk slid open to reveal a military command center that few colonists knew existed. All units. This is Colonial Defense Actual. She spoke into the secure channel. Protocol Achilles is active. Begin evacuation procedures for non-combat personnel. Activate defensive positions Alpha through Omega. All retired military personnel report to designated rally points immediately. Her screen showed thousands of acknowledgement signals lighting up across the colony. Teachers and farmers and shop owners began moving toward hidden bunkers and equipment caches. The peaceful civilian facade of New Portland started transforming into something very different. Henry Walsh was playing with his 3 children in their backyard when his personal device vibrated with a specific pattern he had not felt in 20 years. He glanced at his wife, Claire, who nodded with understanding. She had been expecting this possibility since they moved to the colony. Kids. Mommy needs to take you to visit Aunt Sharon for a few days, Henry said calmly. He hugged each child tightly before they ran inside the pack. Daddy has some work to do. 30 minutes later, Henry stood in an underground facility with 200 other colonists who all looked like ordinary civilians. They were now wearing combat armor and checking weapons that could punch through starship hulls. Every person in the room was a veteran of Earth's Special Forces who had retired to the colonies. Listen up. Captain Hayes addressed the assembled personnel. Krillian fleet is inbound. Ada has 48 hours. Our job is to protect evacuation points and create enough resistance that they think twice about this invasion. Earth Defense Fleet is mobilizing, but we need to hold until they arrive. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We protect our people and make these bastards regret threatening us. Back on Earth, Morrison watched his tactical display fill with status indicators as one by one, the mothballed fleet reported ready status. These were not the small patrol ships that humanity used for routine trade protection. These were warships designed when Earth still remembered how to build instruments of overwhelming force. The EDS Valiant powered up in Orbital Dock Station 7. The massive Dreadnought-class vessel had been built 130 years ago and immediately placed in reserve status. Its reactor core generated enough power to supply an entire planet. Its weapon systems were generations beyond anything humanity sold on the open galactic. Market Captain Peter Grant walked onto his bridge for the first time in his life, though he had trained in simulators for 15 years. All stations report, weapons online, targeting systems calibrated, kinetic batteries loaded, missile racks at full capacity. His tactical officer reported crisply, navigation systems optimal, quantum drive charged and ready, conventional engines operating at peak efficiency, added the flight officer, shields at maximum. Armor plating integrity confirmed. Damage control teams standing by. The engineering officer concluded Morrison's voice came through on the command channel connecting all fleet vessels. All ships, this is Defense Command Actual. Our mission is clear to defend New Portland Colony and demonstrate to the Krillian Empire why attacking human territory is a catastrophic mistake. However, our secondary mission is equally important. We must minimize casualties on both sides if possible. We did not build these ships to conquer. We built them to defend. Let us show the galaxy we remember the difference. Across human space, similar scenes played out. From Mars shipyards to the orbital platforms around Jupiter, warships emerged from storage facilities where they had waited patiently for decades. Each vessel represented technology and capabilities that humanity had deliberately hidden from galactic view. The quantum communication networks allowed instant coordination across light years. Earth's military had maintained this advantage secretly while publicly using slower commercial systems. Now that network lit up with tactical data and strategic planning on New Portland, Hayes watched her screens show civilian transports lifting off every few minutes. Families and non-combat personnel were being evacuated to deeper system locations. Those who remained were either military personnel or civilians who refused to abandon their homes. Defensive Position Alpha reports ready. Position Beta at 95%. Position Charlie is having issues with power routing, but should be operational within 6 hours. Her tactical coordinator reported. Hayes nodded and studied the orbital approach vectors. The Krillians would likely come in on the standard invasion trajectory. They would expect minimal resistance and quick surrender once they demonstrated superior numbers. What they would find instead would teach them a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. Commander Morrison received the final status report 40 hours after Protocol Achilles activated. All fleet elements report ready. We have 67 capital ships, 214 cruisers, 498 destroyers, and over 1,500 support vessels fully operational. Another 300 ships will complete their activation sequences within 72 hours. Morrison stared at the numbers that represented humanity's true military capability. These were ships that could fight and win against any force in known space. They incorporated lessons learned from thousands of years of human warfare, combined with centuries of advanced technology. Sir, Ambassador Crawford is requesting a secure channel. The communications officer announced. Morrison accepted the connection. Crawford's face appeared on his screen from her quarters on the council station. Commander, the Krillian fleet departed on schedule. They are not listening to any diplomatic appeals. Council forces are standing down to avoid escalation. You are authorized to use whatever force is necessary to protect the colony. But please, I know, Ambassador, Morrison interrupted gently. We will try to minimize casualties. We will give them every chance to withdraw. But if they insist on attacking our people, we will stop them decisively. Crawford nodded. She looked tired but determined. Make them understand, Commander. Make them understand why 200 years of human patience and diplomacy was never weakness. Make them understand what we chose not to be. The connection ended and Morrison turned back to his displays. The Krillian fleet was exactly where intelligence predicted. They would reach New Portland in just over 8 hours. All ships prepare for quantum jump, he ordered. Navigation. Calculate emergence points that put us between the Krillians and the colony. Tactical. Weapons-free protocols are authorized, but we broadcast surrender demands before firing. Communications. Prepare the message we discussed. His officers worked quickly. Within minutes, the human fleet was ready to move. Morrison took a deep breath and gave the order that would change galactic history. All ships execute jump now. Space twisted and bent as hundreds of human warships vanished from Earth space and reappeared in perfect formation around New Portland. The quiet colony system suddenly hosted the largest military fleet seen in this region of the galaxy in 2 centuries. On the surface, Henry Walsh checked his weapon one final time and looked at his fellow soldiers. They were teachers and doctors and engineers. They were also warriors who had chosen peaceful lives, but never forgotten their training above them. Captain Grant watched his sensors detect the approaching Krillian fleet. Sir, enemy vessels entering sensor range. Count is 372 ships of various classes. They are maintaining invasion formation. Send them our message. Grant ordered calmly. The Krillian fleet received a simple transmission as they approached what they thought would be an easy conquest. Attention Krillian vessels. You are approaching defended human territory. Withdraw immediately or face military response. This is your only warning. Admiral Vex laughed when he heard the message. His sensors showed exactly what he expected. A handful of defense platforms and maybe a dozen patrol ships. Humans and their empty threats. All ships prepare for. His sensor officer suddenly shouted in alarm. Admiral! Multiple contacts appearing on all vectors. Hundreds of ships. I am reading. Admiral Vexter stared at his tactical displays with growing horror. What should have been a simple invasion had transformed into a nightmare scenario. His 372 ships were now facing a human fleet that numbered over 700 vessels, many of which were larger and more heavily armed than anything in Krillian service. All ships, battle formation Omega. Vexter ordered. His voice carried less confidence than it had in the council chambers. Prepare to engage. Show these humans that numbers mean nothing against Krillian military superiority. Commander Jake Morrison watched from his flagship as the Krillian fleet attempted to organize their scattered formation. Tactical, select targets for precision strikes. I want their weapons disabled, not their life support. Communications. Broadcast our terms one final time. The message went out across all frequencies in multiple languages. Krillian forces, you have 10 minutes to power down weapons and surrender. Any aggressive action will be met with overwhelming response. We do not wish to kill you, but we will protect our territory. Choose wisely. Vexter's response was to order his fleet to open fire. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds streaked across the void toward the nearest human vessels. Hostile fire detected. Shields holding at 98%. Captain Peter Grant's tactical officer reported without concern. The weapons that should have crippled a warship barely scratched the human ship's defensive screens. Return fire, Grant ordered calmly. Targeting solution Gamma. Disable their weapons arrays and propulsion systems. Minimum collateral damage. The EDS Valiant's main batteries fired with precision that shocked the Krillian fleet. Beams of coherent energy struck with surgical accuracy. 3 Krillian cruisers suddenly went dark as their weapon systems exploded internally while their crew compartments remained intact. Morrison watched the battle unfold across multiple displays. Human ships moved with coordination that seemed almost choreographed. Every shot hit exactly where intended. Every maneuver placed them in optimal firing positions while keeping civilians protected. Sir, Krillian force is attempting a flanking maneuver through Sector 7. His tactical officer reported. Allow them to commit to the approach and then cut them off. Morrison responded. I want them to understand they are not fighting poorly trained militia. Show them what real military excellence looks like. 20 human destroyers appeared to retreat from the Krillian flanking force. Vexter saw this as confirmation that humans were weak. He ordered 40 of his ships to pursue what he thought was a vulnerable target. The human ships led the Krillians directly into a perfectly executed trap. From 3 different vectors, human cruisers appeared and opened fire with devastating accuracy. Within minutes, the entire Krillian flanking force was disabled and drifting. Admiral, we have lost 38 ships to weapons failure. Vexter's tactical officer shouted. Panic was creeping into the Krillian command center. All ships report human targeting accuracy exceeds 97%. Our shields are not designed to handle this level of precision. Vexter slammed his fist against his console. How are they doing this? Our intelligence said humans relied on defensive pacts. Where did this fleet come from? His intelligence officer pulled up data that painted a disturbing picture. Admiral, our intelligence was based on human commercial vessel capabilities. These warships are using technology generations beyond what humanity sells to other species. Their weapons, shields, propulsion, targeting systems, everything is far more advanced than we anticipated. Another group of Krillian ships attempted a coordinated assault on a human supply vessel. They thought targeting logistics would force the human fleet to break. Formation Captain Grant's voice came across the fleet channel with a hint of amusement. Valiant to all ships. Krillian force is targeting transport vessel Northern Star. Should we inform them that Northern Star is actually a mobile weapons platform disguised as a supply ship? Morrison allowed himself a slight smile. Let them discover that on their own, Captain. The Krillian attack wing closed on what they thought was an easy target. The Northern Star suddenly transformed before their sensors. Weapon ports opened across its hull as shield generators powered to military-grade intensity. The defenseless supply ship proceeded to disable 4 Krillian destroyers in less than 2 minutes. Vexter watched, his fleet being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every tactic. Pull back to defensive formation. All ships retreat to Rally Point Sigma. His fleet attempted to withdraw, but found human ships already positioned along every retreat vector. Morrison had predicted this response and prepared accordingly. Admiral Vexter, your fleet is surrounded, and most of your vessels are disabled. Morrison's voice carried across the open channel. You have fought bravely, but this battle is over. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Continue fighting, and we will be forced to completely destroy your fleet. The choice is yours. Vexter's pride would not allow surrender. Krillian forces do not yield to inferior species. All remaining ships full assault on their flagship. If we eliminate their command vessel, their coordination will collapse. Every functional Krillian ship turned toward Morrison's command carrier and accelerated at maximum speed. Weapons blazing as they charged what they hoped would be a vulnerable target, Morrison watched them come and shook his head sadly. They still do not understand. Tactical, defensive formation, Charlie. Let us show them what a real warship can do. His flagship, the Edis Unity, had been designed as a mobile command platform that could coordinate entire fleets while surviving sustained assault from multiple vectors. It was not the biggest ship in human service, but it was certainly one of the most heavily defended Krillian weapons hammered against. Unity shields for over 3 minutes of continuous bombardment. Energy readings climbed as the human defensive screens absorbed punishment that would have vaporized most galactic warships. Shields holding at 78%. The tactical officer reported, enemy weapons are having minimal effect. Their technology cannot penetrate our defensive systems. Morrison gave his next order with regret in his voice. All fleet elements surround and disable all remaining Krillian vessels. Target their propulsion first, then weapons, then communications. I want every ship dead in space, but I want every crew alive to tell this story. What followed was a demonstration of military capability that would be analyzed by galactic strategists for generations. Human ships moved with precision that seemed impossible. Their weapons hit targets with accuracy that defied standard tactical doctrine. Their coordination suggested either telepathic communication or quantum-linked battle computers in less than 30 minutes. The entire Krillian invasion fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, disabled. Every ship drifted in space with life support intact but weapons and engines completely inoperable. Captain Grant reviewed his casualty reports and felt relieved. Sir, reporting 0 friendly casualties. Minor shield damage to 6 vessels. All enemy ships disabled with minimal loss of life. Estimated Krillian casualties are fewer than 500 across their entire fleet. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Broadcast our message to Admiral Vexter. The communication reached the Krillian flagship where Vexter sat in shock, surrounded by damaged consoles and injured crew members. Morrison's face appeared on his screen. Admiral, your invasion is over, Morrison said without triumph or mockery. Your fleet is disabled, but your crews are alive because we chose mercy. We could have destroyed every ship in minutes, but that is not who we are anymore. We learned centuries ago that overwhelming victory means nothing if it costs unnecessary lives. Vexter's voice was bitter with defeat. What are you? Our intelligence said humans were peaceful traders. You have military capability that exceeds most galactic powers. Where has this been hiding? We have been hiding in plain sight, Morrison replied. We chose peace when we joined the galactic community. We chose to be traders and diplomats because we remembered what it was like to be conquerors. We built this fleet and then mothballed it because we hoped we would never need it. You forced us to remember what we are capable of being. The Council will hear of this. Vexter protested weakly. Humanity has been lying about its military strength. That violates. We violated nothing, Morrison interrupted. Every treaty we signed was honored. We never claimed to be weak. Others assumed it. We simply chose not to correct those assumptions because peace was more important than pride. Now you and your people will carry a message back to the galaxy. Vexter waited silently for the human commander to continue. Morrison's voice carried weight that transcended the battle they had just fought. Tell them what happened here. Tell them how easily we could have destroyed your fleet. Tell them we chose not to because we value life over victory. But most importantly, tell them this humanity chose peace deliberately. We remember what we were, and we fight every day to be something better. Any species that forces us to become warriors again will discover that we are very good at it because it is what we spent thousands of years perfecting before we learned there was a better way. The transmission ended, and Vexter sat in the ruins of his flagship, contemplating the lesson he had learned at such terrible cost. His pride. The Galactic Council chamber was filled beyond capacity as representatives from every major civilization gathered to witness the emergency session. Holographic displays showed real-time footage from the battle at New Portland. The images of disabled Krillian warships drifting among pristine human vessels sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. High Counselor Zephyrin stood at his elevated platform surveying the chaos before him. Delegates were shouting questions and accusations. Military commanders were demanding explanations. The carefully maintained peace was cracking under the weight of revealed truth. Order. Zephyrin's voice carried authority that silenced even the most aggressive species. We will have order, or I will clear this chamber. Ambassador Lisa Crawford stood at the human podium, looking remarkably calm considering the storm of controversy surrounding her. She had changed from her diplomatic robes into a simple suit that somehow made her appear more formidable rather than less. Ambassador Crawford, this council demands answers. A Thurian delegate shouted from across the chamber. Humanity has hidden military capabilities that rival the combined forces of 3 major powers. This deception violates the spirit, if not the letter, of our treaties. Crawford's voice remained steady as she responded. We have violated nothing. Every treaty signed by Earth has been honored completely. We reported our defensive capabilities exactly as required. If other species chose to assume those capabilities represented our maximum potential, that was their error, not our deception. You allowed us to believe you were weak. Another delegate protested. We allowed you to believe what you wanted to believe, Crawford corrected. Humanity joined this council 2 centuries ago as a peaceful species seeking cooperation and trade. We demonstrated those values consistently. We never claimed to be defenseless. We simply chose not to advertise our military strength because we had no intention of using it. Zephyrin raised his hand for silence again. Perhaps it is time for the full truth to be revealed. Archivist Kelmer, please bring forward the classified reports from humanity's first contact period. An ancient being who rarely left the archives shuffled forward, carrying data crystals that glowed with security seals. Kelmer's species lived for over 600 years and dedicated their lives to preserving knowledge. His presence alone signified the importance of what he carried. Counselor, these reports were sealed by unanimous vote 203 years ago. Kelmer's voice was thin but clear. The council of that era decided this information was too dangerous for general distribution. Circumstances have changed. Zephyran replied, "The galaxy needs to understand why humanity was invited to join us and why experienced leaders have been cautious about provoking them." Kelmer placed the data crystals in the central projector. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing documents that predated human integration into galactic society. The first image showed Earth as it had appeared to early scout ships. A blue-green world orbiting a yellow star in a relatively sparse region of space. Initial survey designated this world as Classification 7, a death world. Kelmer explained, "Gravity higher than galactic standard. Extreme weather variations. Multiple climate zones with deadly fauna and flora. Tectonic instability causing frequent earthquakes and volcanic activity. The fact that intelligent life evolved on such a hostile planet should have been our first warning." The display shifted to show early observations of human civilization. Images of warfare spanning millennia. Weapons ranging from primitive spears to nuclear arsenals. Human history is defined by conflict. Kelmer continued, "Our scouts documented over 15,000 major wars in recorded history. Their species developed military technology centuries before achieving space travel. They perfected methods of organized violence that shocked our analysts." A Vorian military analyst appeared in the historical footage. His face carried deep concern. "The species on the third planet demonstrates tactical and strategic thinking beyond anything we have encountered. They adapt to enemy capabilities with frightening speed. They develop new weapons and countermeasures constantly. More concerning is their capacity for total warfare. They have demonstrated willingness to sacrifice entire populations to achieve victory." The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this information. They were seeing humanity not as the peaceful traders they had known for 2 centuries, but as the warriors. Humans had been before reaching the stars. Crawford did not interrupt. This history needed to be understood. The display showed more reports from first contact era strategists, analyzing human military capabilities. They achieved nuclear fission while still using conventional explosives in warfare. They developed intercontinental ballistic missiles before establishing permanent orbital stations. Their entire technological development prioritized weapons and military applications. Another analyst appeared with data that made several delegates gasp. Projection models indicate that if left to develop independently, this species would achieve interstellar capability within 50 to 75 years. They would expand aggressively, seeking resources for their growing population. They would likely view other civilizations as competitors rather than partners. Zephyran's voice carried across the chamber. That was when the decision was made humanity needed to be integrated into galactic society before they became a threat to it. The display showed council sessions from over 2 centuries ago. Younger versions of some still living counselors debated the human question. We invite them to join us now. While they are still developing, a Thurian counselor argued in the historical footage. We offered them access to technology and knowledge that would take them centuries to develop independently. We show them that cooperation is more beneficial than conquest. And if they reject the offer? Someone asked. Then we monitor them closely and prepare defensive measures, came the grim reply. But I believe humans are capable of growth. Their history shows not just warfare, but also art, philosophy, compassion. They have capacity for both incredible violence and remarkable nobility. The historical footage ended and the chamber remained silent. Crawford finally spoke into that silence. You invited us to join you because you were afraid of what we might become if left alone. You hoped we would choose peace if given the opportunity. You were right. Her voice carried emotion that was rare for the disciplined ambassador. We chose peace. We looked at our history of warfare and decided to be something different. We joined this council and traded weapons development for cultural exchange. We mothballed our warships and built merchant vessels instead. We became the peaceful species you needed us to be. But you kept the weapons. A military commander accused. Of course we kept them. Crawford's response was sharp. We are not fools. We knew that choosing peace does not guarantee peace in return. We knew that some species might view our choice as weakness rather than strength. We prepared defenses while hoping we would never need them. Zephyrin nodded slowly. And for 2 centuries, you proved that our decision was correct. Humanity became valued members of this community. You contributed to science, culture, trade. You were exactly what we hoped you would be. Until the Krillians attacked, Crawford finished. Until someone forced us to remember what we are capable of being. The display showed current footage from New Portland. The precision and coordination of the human fleet. The methodical dismantling of Krillian forces. The deliberate choice to disable rather than destroy. You could have annihilated that fleet. A Vorian observer noted quietly. Yes, Crawford agreed simply. But that would prove nothing except that we remember how to kill efficiently. We wanted to prove something more important. We remember how to win without unnecessary bloodshed. We remember that enemies today might be allies tomorrow. We remember that showing mercy is harder than showing strength. Another set of reports appeared in the display. These were compiled by various intelligence services over the past 2 centuries. Analyzing human behavior, humanity has consistently chosen de-escalation in minor conflicts, one report noted. They accept unfavorable trade terms rather than resort to economic warfare. They withdraw from disputed territories rather than fight over resources. Human military personnel rotate through civilian life frequently, another report observed. Officers become teachers. Soldiers become farmers. They deliberately prevent the creation of a permanent warrior class. Human culture emphasizes learning from history. A cultural analysis concluded. They teach their children about their violent past not with pride but with regret. They use their history as a warning rather than inspiration. Crawford gestured to all the reports and data surrounding them. This is who we are, a species that learned through terrible cost that might does not make right. That victory without honor is worthless. That peace built on mutual respect lasts longer than peace enforced through fear. The Krillians learned a difficult lesson, Zephyrin said quietly. Perhaps the entire galaxy needed this reminder. Senior military commander from a previously aggressive species stood slowly. His name was Korthax, and he commanded the Zelfin Armada. Ambassador Crawford, I must ask, if humanity possesses such overwhelming military capability, why have you not sought to dominate this council? Why accept equal status when you could? 3 weeks after the battle at New Portland, Admiral Vexter stood before the Galactic Council not as a conquering hero, but as a defeated commander facing judgment. His scaled hands were bound with ceremonial restraints as representatives from dozens of species watched his humiliation. Commander Jake Morrison sat in the gallery alongside Ambassador Crawford. He wore his full military dress uniform, something he had not done since graduating from the academy 30 years ago. The rows of medals and commendations told the story of a career spent preparing for war while hoping for peace. Admiral Vexter, you have been found guilty of unlawful military aggression against a council member species. I, Councillor Zephyrin, pronounced. Your actions violated 3 major treaties and endangered the peace this body has maintained for centuries. You will be stripped of rank and imprisoned for a period of, with respect. Councillor, Crawford interrupted, standing from her position. The human delegation requests leniency in this matter. The chamber upped in surprise conversation. Vexter himself looked shocked that his victims would speak on his behalf. Crawford continued once order was restored. Admiral Vexter attacked us based on false assumptions about human capabilities. He believed humanity was weak because we presented ourselves as peaceful. His error was understandable given the information available to him. We request that his sentence be reduced and that he be allowed to serve as an example of why peaceful species should not be mistaken for weak species. Zephron considered this unusual request carefully. Ambassador, this being ordered an attack that could have killed thousands of your citizens, but did not. Morrison spoke up from the gallery, his voice carrying military authority. Because we stopped him without unnecessary bloodshed. We proved our point. Further punishment serves no purpose except revenge. And revenge is not justice. The council deliberated briefly before Zephron announced the decision. Admiral Vexter will be stripped of military rank and command authority. He will serve as a civilian advisor to the council on military affairs. His primary duty will be educating other species about the dangers of underestimating opponents. He will begin by documenting everything he learned about humanity. Vexter bowed his head in acceptance. It was a merciful sentence considering the magnitude of his failure after the session ended. Vexter approached Morrison and Crawford in the corridor outside the chamber. Why did you show me mercy? I would have killed your people without hesitation. Morrison met his eyes steadily. Because we remember what it feels like to be defeated. We remember the shame and anger. We also remember that how victors treat the defeated determines whether peace endures. I do not understand you, Vexter admitted. You have power to dominate this entire region of space. You choose not to use it. You have technology generations beyond most species. You keep it hidden. You could have destroyed my fleet in minutes. You disabled it carefully to preserve lives. Crawford smiled slightly. Then you are beginning to understand what makes humanity different. We do not measure success by how much we can destroy, but by how much we can preserve. The galaxy thinks you are weak because you choose peace. Vexter said quietly. Let them think that, Morrison replied. Those who are wise will understand that choosing restraint requires more strength than choosing violence. Those who are foolish will learn the hard way, as you did. Back on Earth, Morrison returned to his home for the first time in weeks. His wife Sarah greeted him at the door with their daughter Emma close behind. The 12-year-old had been following news reports of the battle obsessively. Daddy! Emma ran to hug him. Everyone at school is talking about what happened. They say you commanded the whole fleet. Morrison held his daughter and felt the weight of command lift slightly from his shoulders. I did what needed to be done, sweetheart. But I am very glad it is over. My teacher said humanity could have destroyed the Krillian fleet. Emma said with childlike curiosity. Why didn't you? Sarah met her husband's eyes over their daughter's head. She had been a tactical officer before Emma was born and understood the question's implications. Morrison knelt to look his daughter in the eye. Because destroying is easy. Protecting is hard. Anyone can break something. It takes skill and discipline to stop a threat without causing unnecessary harm. But they attacked us first. Emma protested with youthful passion for justice. Yes, they did, Morrison acknowledged. And we stopped them. We showed them they made a mistake. But we also showed them mercy because we want them to learn from this experience. If we had killed all of them, their people would only want revenge. By letting them live, we give them a chance to understand why attacking us was wrong. Emma considered this seriously. So you are teaching them? Exactly, Morrison smiled. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to help your enemy understand why fighting was a bad idea in the first place. Director Susan Blake watched from her office as the human defense fleet returned to Earth system. Massive warships that had struck fear into the Krillian Empire now moved peacefully through civilian traffic. They would soon return to storage, waiting silently for the next time they might be needed her. Assistant brought reports showing the galactic response to the battle. Intelligence agencies from 24 species had requested information about human military capabilities. Defense contractors wanted to license human technology. Aggressive military powers had suddenly become very polite in diplomatic communications. How should we respond to all these requests? The assistant asked Blake, considered carefully. We release basic information about our defensive capabilities. We make it clear we can defend ourselves, but we do not seek to intimidate others. We offer to share some defensive technology with peaceful species, but we keep our most advanced systems classified. Won't that just create more questions? The assistant asked. Yes, Blake agreed. And that is exactly the point. Uncertainty is often the best deterrent. As long as potential aggressors do not know our full capabilities, they will hesitate to test us. On New Portland, Captain Nicole Hayes supervised the reconstruction of the minor damage from the battle. Civilian life had returned to normal surprisingly quickly. Children played in parks that had been evacuation zones just weeks ago. Shops that had been converted to military supply depots were selling groceries and clothing again. Henry Walsh returned to his civilian life, teaching engineering at the local university. His students knew he had been called up for military service, but they did not know the details of his role in the colony's defense. Professor Walsh, is it true you fought in the battle? A student asked after class one day. I served in the Colonial Defense Force, Walsh answered carefully. Many of us did. We protected evacuation points and helped coordinate civilian safety. He did not mention the Kryllian landing force that had attempted to seize a civilian shelter. He did not describe how his unit had disabled their ships before they could harm anyone. Some experiences were not appropriate for classroom discussion. The student persisted. Everyone says humans are really powerful warriors, but we pretend to be peaceful. Walsh shook his head firmly. That is backwards. We are really peaceful people who remember how to be warriors when necessary. There is an important difference. Warriors who pretend to be peaceful are dangerous. Peaceful people who can fight when needed are civilized. Back in the council chambers, Ambassador Crawford worked with other delegates to draft new regulations regarding military engagement between member species. The rules being proposed were designed to prevent future incidents like the Kryllian invasion. These regulations are quite favorable to humanity, a Thurian diplomat observed. Species will be required to verify defensive capabilities before any military action. Aggressive species must provide extensive evidence of threat before Council authorizes force. These regulations protect all peaceful species, Crawford corrected. Not just humanity. The Kryllians attacked us based on assumptions. These rules require verification before aggression. That benefits everyone except those who seek easy conquests. The regulations passed with overwhelming support. Even former aggressive species voted in favor after witnessing what happened when assumptions proved wrong. High Counselor Zephron met privately with Crawford after the vote. You have changed the galaxy, Ambassador. Species that once viewed peace as weakness now understand it can be a choice made from position of strength. Crawford looked tired but satisfied. I hope this means fewer species will need to learn the lesson the Kryllians learned. I hope humanity can return to being the peaceful traders and diplomats we prefer to be. Do you think that is possible? Zephron asked. Now that everyone knows what you are capable of. I hope so, Crawford replied honestly. We never wanted to be feared. We wanted to be respected. If revealing our capabilities earns that respect, perhaps it was worth the cost. Months after the battle, military academies across the galaxy began teaching a new case study. The Battle of New Portland became required study for every command officer. The lessons were analyzed from every angle: tactical, strategic, diplomatic, and moral in Avorian Military Academy. An instructor addressed a class of young officers. What made the human victory significant was not their superior technology or numbers. Many species have those advantages.